Chapter 14. The Bridge to Lyoko. Org wound up at the plaza of the first city and looked all around him, alarmed. Eva Skinner had disappeared. He had left her right here, unconscious on the bright cobblestone, and now she was no longer there. The boy planted himself in front of Xana and closed his fists, ready to fight. Where is it? His enemy's face lit up with a smirk. You mean Hopper's ghost? We left it at the castle. The stupid recording wasn't good for anything. I'm not talking about Hopper. I'm talking about Eva's body. You said that no one would hurt her. I see. I didn't think it was wise to leave her here. My monsters love to play, and I wouldn't want them to hurt her by mistake. How sweet, sighed Oric with sarcasm. Where'd you put her? Xana raised a finger and part of the pavement near the fountain in the plaza started to expand. At first, the smooth pavement only slightly buckled, but then, from it, the bubble grew and rose, in a way that reminded Oric of the top of a cracked egg. The object that came out seemed to him like some sort of galactic cradle. The young man approached the strange object, and the surface of the cradle became transparent before his eyes. Oric stumbled. He was surprised and a bit scared at the same time. Eva was inside. Her eyes were closed, and her blonde hair was laid out on a celestial blue pillow. It looked like an illustration of Sleeping Beauty, but Xana was a computer. What would he know of fairy tales? Maybe this artificial intelligence was different from the emotionless monster that Oric had fought against 1,000,000 times before on Lyoko. Now, Xana seemed more human. She's sleeping, he finally muttered. Very observant. Bravo, the dark-haired young man replied while once again walking off and disappearing into an alleyway. Here they are, he cried out not long after. Oric hurried in this direction. The road seemed to be cut in half by a row of bricks as black as the muzzle of a wolf. Let's go, exclaimed Xana as he began to head down the dark path. Oric began to trot behind him, perplexed. Why does this black path interest you so much? He asked him. Xana gave a sarcastic smile. Don't you remember what Hopper's recording said? The professor rebuilt the first city to try to prevent its potential use as a weapon, but realized that that wouldn't be possible. So when he isolated it and put a guardian in place. Me. Oric nodded. He also remembered another thing that Hopper had told them. In the past, Xana and Alita had been friends. Was what he had said serious? The city where we are now, the young man continued from beside him, is a closed-off space, completely separated from Lyoko, but what? There's a channel that connects the two worlds, a long bridge suspended through the void that goes from the first city to Lyoko. Oric's eyes grew wide. In an instant, he was frozen in fear. Hopper said that, he stuttered, that he had isolated the castle. Xana nodded. See this row of bricks? Well, it connects the castle to the wall, and the wall is the barrier that divides the two worlds. When we arrived here, we opened a path through it. In this way, Lyoko and the first city will be united again. And the castle will become a weapon again, thought Oric, and you could recover all of your power and destroy our world. He needed to stop him, even though he hadn't the slightest idea how to do it. Yumi finished unwinding the electric cable and attached it to the wall of the tunnel with some tape to keep it from ending up in the water. Then she came to a vertical well that led to the surface and attached the end of the cable to her belt. I'm here, she called out. When she had come here with Org and the others in the past, they usually helped each other by joining hands to create a stepway to reach the first iron support 2 meters up, but Org was very far away now. From the entrance to the well, Professor Hertz, who had come out several minutes before, sent down a large rope, attached it to a tree with a complicated knot, and then gave Yumi the go-ahead. The young girl climbed it agilely until reaching the cold air of the surface. The electric cable that she had unwound throughout the sewer swayed behind her, copying her momentum as if it were a long tail. Outside, the air was very crisp and was deliciously odor-free. Hertz had laid out a nylon canvas on the humid surface of the undergrowth to keep the material from getting wet. She was now sitting on the ground, at work with a big black box and a pair of pliers. Yumi detached the electric cable from her belt and gave it to the woman. Here, she said. I connected it to the command box in the maintenance room like you asked. Good, approved the professor. And Jim? He's still down there. He's finishing checking to make sure that the watertight doors were all shut right. Yumi sat in silence beside the professor, observing her hands as they worked with such precision and skill on a bomb. Professor Hertz could simply create one like that, as if it were nothing special, using only simple materials from the laboratory and other things that she had gradually found here and there at the school. This isn't Professor Hertz, the young girl remembered. In reality, she's Major Steinbeck, a Special Forces agent. She's an expert in explosives and who knows how many other shady things. Yumi heard noises coming from the underground. She leaned towards the dark well that led to the sewers and smiled. Jim Morales was trying to climb up, but he couldn't coordinate his movements between the rope and the supports and slipped again and again. Instead of just standing there and watching me, the gym teacher panted, You could give me a hand, you know. But aren't you an athlete? The young girl joked with him. Yes, but, I think I hurt my foot. Ah, of course. Yumi gave him a hand, helping him to exit from the mouth of the sewers. Then Jim gave them a quick report. He had checked over the sewers twice, and everything was ready to go. In the end, Professor Hertz was right. Whoever it was that constructed the underground tunnels that interconnected Caddick, the Hermitage, and the old factory had led themselves to developing an underground system of conduits separate from the rest. There were watertight doors that isolated the tunnels at the school from the normal sewers in the city. This meant that the kids could shelter themselves from the men in black without the local area, or even the city, plunging into chaos. We're ready, Professor Hertz said. Yumi nodded her head. Jim, help me put the sewer cover in place. I don't want the river water to flood the sewers and turn the park into a lake. At that moment, a silhouette came out from the undergrowth. It was Odd. What happened to you? Asked Yumi. You look like you saw a monster. Yeah, that's exactly what happened, the boy confirmed. And he left me a message for you. We lost Org and Aelita. The Green Phoenix has taken over the Hermitage. The soldier roughly pulled Jeremy towards him and pushed him against one of the scanners. Now, I'm going to leave you, so don't try anything stupid. The idea to try something stupid hadn't even crossed Jeremy's mind. Beside the one with him now, there were a lot of soldiers in the room, all armed with submachine guns, positioned so that they formed a circle around the scanners on the second underground floor. Jeremy observed the scanners once more. The metal cylinders were connected to the ceiling through an abundance of tangled, multicolored cables that seemed like the roots of some strange upside-down trees. He was about to enter Lyoko to help Green Phoenix. He would have liked to put up a fight, but he was alone and these men had Aelita's mother in their power, and they were willing to hurt her. The soldier fought several moments against the restraints. Then Jeremy felt his blood start to run back through his veins again. He started to rub his wrists. His circulation had been cut off for so long that his fingers were now white and under a constant, uncomfortable sensation of pins and needles. Jeremy put on a brave face and went ahead and approached the scanner. The sliding doors opened from the middle, unveiling a narrow, cylindrical cabin illuminated by an intensely bright light. As soon as he was inside, the door shut behind him and the scanner speakers transmitted Memory's voice to him. We're about to begin the transfer. You will appear in the desert sector of Lyoko, and you must head to the 5th sector. Then... I know how that works, the young man abruptly interrupted her. In that case, let's get going. Virtualization! Jeremy felt a push upwards, and he tossed his head back. A jet of hot air threw his hair towards the ceiling, and he began to have a strong sensation of vertigo. He then found himself landing awkwardly, stumbling on the curved ends of his ridiculous green slippers, and fell to his knees. He was having a hard time balancing, but this was a normal effect of being virtualized. It's difficult for one's eyes and body to adapt to the new world, and to their new appearance. Just like Memory had said, he was in the desert sector. In front of him stretched a plateau of sand dotted by several dark-colored rocks that stood out here and there amongst the flat, bare land. The sand was spread as far as the horizon in every direction without any dunes or any sort of variation in the landscape. It was immediately apparent that this was a fake reality, far from the real world. Well, here I am again, he thought with a sigh. Jeremy had solemnly decided that he would never go to Lyoko again. That was until Hannibal Mago had forced him to change his mind. Oof! He exhaled as he stood up. The young man observed his slippers with their twisted tips and his legs lined in tights. The rest of him wore a bright green leotard that also served as a short skirt, fitted to his waist with a belt, from which a dagger hung. He felt his face. His ears had grown, and there were tufts of hair coming from the tips. On his head he wore a silly little green cap that ended in a point with a small feather stuck through the fabric in one of its sides. It was totally unfair. On Lyoko, Org transformed into an expert samurai, an odd and extremely agile catboy. Jeremy, however, became an elf, a ridiculous green elf in tights. A chilly wind began to blow through the trees in the park at Caddick, causing Yumi to shiver. The young girl watched her companions one by one. Odd, Jim Morales, and Professor Hertz, who had returned to her work on her device in absolute silence. Yumi couldn't believe it. First Jeremy, and now Ulrich, Eva, and Aelita. Well, only she and Odd were left to try and resolve the situation. So, what do we do now? She muttered. We continue with our plan, Hertz told her, raising her head for a moment to look her directly in the eyes. What plan? Asked Odd. The woman ignored him. Then she grabbed a small red cable with the pliers, its end peeled back to reveal the copper wires inside. Get ready, said Hertz. 3, 2, 1... She lightly connected the end of the cable to another inside the plastic case in front of her. There was a small spark. And the fuse is lit, commented Yumi. Not a moment later, the bomb exploded. A roar could be heard surging underground, then a churning, and finally the noise of the water starting to flood in. Yumi pressed the palms of her hands on the ground and felt the vibration through the ground. It had worked. The Caddick sewer system is isolated from the rest of the sewers in the city, she explained upon seeing Odd's perplexed face. We just closed off the passageways that connected them directly to the factory, the Hermitage, and the normal sewers. Uh-huh, nodded Odd. Professor Hertz found an area where one of the cattic tunnels passed close by to a river, and we blew up the tunnel wall. So, what you're saying is you flooded the sewers? Exactly. We can no longer flush the toilets or take any showers, but at least we'll be sure that Hannibal Mako's soldiers can't take us by surprise by coming in from right under our feet. Wow! Hey, you didn't warn me about the shower, said Jim Morales, while turning towards Professor Hertz with a worried expression on his face. How in the world am I going to be able to get rid of all this stink? She gestured for him to be quiet. We need to return to the school immediately and study our plan for defense in detail. If I know Mago, he kidnapped Jeremy with a clear objective in mind. Reopen the channels that link Lyoko to the first city, and in that case, you can bet we'll be receiving some nasty surprises in the near future. Jeremy heard a snickering directly in his ear. He jumped, disoriented. It was as if someone had placed a little bird inside his ear canal and it was whispering inside. He then remembered that this was to be expected. For once, it was him on Lyoko, and someone else was guiding him from the outside. Memory. Can you hear me? He asked aloud. He felt a bit stupid speaking all alone in the middle of a desert, but then the laughter stopped and he heard the woman's voice. Yes, yes, your new look is very cute. Jeremy sighed, feeling dead inside. Forget it. What should I do? Memory didn't respond. Jeremy felt the terrain begin to vibrate, and the sand in front of him started to move, then began to sink, creating a menacing whirlpool. Quicksand! The boy jumped back. It couldn't be caused by Xana or his monsters. The artificial intelligence didn't have access to Lyoko. I opened a passage for you, Memory's voice then said. It should take you directly to the central core of Lyoko. Jeremy began to tremble. Memory wanted him to jump inside the sand vortex? He reflected back for a moment to what happened during the final battle against Xana. On this occasion, Hopper appeared as a sphere of energy and opened up a passageway to the heart of Lyoko. Alita and Odd were in the ice sector, and the silver waterfall that was in front of them transformed into a well that led into darkness. The two children had jumped in without thinking twice, but they were athletic and agile. He, on the other hand, enough of that, he said to himself. Whether I like it or not, I don't have a choice. Jeremy watched the sand under his feet. The whirlpool had become so large that it had transformed into a sort of yellow tornado that became lost in the depths of the earth. The boy covered his nose, tried to muster up some courage, and jumped. The desert enveloped him with millions of grains of sand as hard as rocks that scratched against his skin and clothes to the point of making him screech. The sand entered his mouth, stifling him, while his body was completely carried away by the tornado of earth and became stronger and stronger the further it pulled him down. He fell and fell, and when he finally felt the ground again, he reopened his eyes. He was in a place that he knew very well. Jeremy was on a square platform. It was made of smooth and hard material, and he could feel its cold surface through the soles of his slippers. All around him was the core of Lyoko, a cylindrical well with dark blue walls that went on forever and ever in all directions both above and below him. Jeremy experienced a wave of vertigo so powerful that it brought him to his knees. In the past, it was precisely on this platform that Alita had used her father's code to inject an antivirus straight into the virtual world's core, capable of destroying Xana. Hopper had sacrificed himself in order to ensure that his daughter could successfully carry out the mission. Here I am, thought Jeremy, where everything began and where everything must end. Know what? He asked. There should be a bridge somewhere, Memory's voice responded several moments later, seeming a little unsure of herself. You need to cross it, then open the door you find on the other side. There's no bridge here. There's just emptiness all around, protested Jeremy. I see that, but, the voice interrupted him, unsteadily. The boy approached the edge of the platform, leaned forward a bit to look down, then suddenly pulled himself back, frightened. The platform seemed to surge directly to the walls, and there were no doors or openings of any type. He was stuck. Turning around, he saw that a luminous screen had appeared, suspended in the air. It was a slightly transparent rectangle that was floating more or less a meter above the platform. The screen was divided into two halves horizontally. On the topmost and clearer half, the word code was written. The second and more transparent half represented the average computer keyboard. The boy touched the keys with a finger, and on the screen appeared Code Q. Jeremy erased this letter. He needed to think what it was he should type. What could be the correct code to get out of this nightmarish place? He felt the answer naturally make its way to the tips of his fingers. This place had been modeled by Professor Hopper. It was a gift for his daughter. Code A-E-L. He started to type. Code Alita. The screen flickered twice and disappeared. Jeremy's feet began to rise above the platform. The boy waved his arms, trying to maintain his balance, then became rigid as he felt an invisible force propel him towards the upper interior of the core. He was flying. The code Alita carried him into the sky.